Sarah Best, thank you so much for joining. I want to introduce everyone to Sarah Best. Sarah is an amazing individual. I've known you, Sarah, for over 15 years. Is it probably, I would say probably around that amount of time. And we got to know each other, of course, when I was doing a lot of health coaching, and we met your sister-in-law and your brother and got to know you through that experience, and then just was awed at your deep understanding of people, just how you want to make people come alive in their work. And I have enjoyed that. Of course, most recently, we worked together. You were a part of the Pivot and Rise Mastermind. You are now a certified Rise advocate, but I believe you've always been a Rise advocate. So what I would love to start off this conversation, this is just a conversation for everyone to get to know you as an individual, and I want them to understand just how they can work with you, because you have a new company called Real Good Ventures. But before we dive into all of that, please let us know just who you are and just a little bit about yourself, your history, and how you came to where you are now. Just a little snippet of
Sure.
that perspective for people.
Thank you, Diana. It's just a joy and a delight to be here with you for so many reasons. So thank you.
Yeah.
I am a Toledo native, and I think for as far back as I can remember, I've always been interested in people. I'm very extroverted, very, I love to be around people. And I think I'm one of those, at least in high school anyways, I was one of those kids where maybe I didn't feel like I measured up intellectually, which I'm sure I did fine. But I kind of was geared more toward the helping profession or people things. And I think that's where I've certainly found my passion, and also understanding business. But the people part is huge. And here in Toledo, I've had a couple of different opportunities to grow as a professional in an insurance company. I did some consulting for nonprofits with a great organization. A while back in the early 2000s, had my own firm, but find myself in a place today where I just feel like everything that I've experienced and all the people I've met and all the education I received has kind of come full circle. I love Toledo. I love working in Toledo, and I have a family. I'm married to Tim for 26 years and 3 grown kids. Well, the youngest just went out the door to college.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just humbled by all the good things there are, not only in our community, but in the world.
Yeah. So you started off, though, your education was social worker. I did not know that
Yeah.
you were a social worker, and that kind of piqued you to get into this whole people business,
It
right?
did.
And then I think you said that at one time you had a education in emotional intelligence. Tell us a little bit about why emotional intelligence started to come into play with you.
Sure. Well, if I can go to the place where I did get an undergraduate degree in social work and worked with kids and families for years in a sizable mental health organization here in Northwest Ohio. And while there, I found sort of a career path into working with companies in the employee assistance program. So that's where I got really passionate about how much time we spend at work and how unhappy people are being at work. And gosh, there's got to be something we can do and do differently. So that's when emotional intelligence entered the scene. And it was in the early 2000s. I mean, probably everybody remembers Daniel Goleman's book.
Yeah, I love that book.
Yeah, EQ, Why It Matters More Than IQ. And when I was working in the mental health organization, one of the VPs approached me and said, "We'd like to send you to this training on emotional intelligence." And I was like, "What is that?" And he said, "I don't know, but it may be all you do at some point." I was like, okay. And I think I had that kind of spirit. I loved embracing new challenges or building new things. So I went to this training on emotional intelligence, and I will remember forever sitting in the seat where I was, and the facilitator kind of opening my world to this notion that, there's so much more to us than our IQ. And for people like me who've always wondered, am I smart enough? I don't have the scores like everybody else does. Oh, we can navigate the world effectively. There's a way that we deploy our intelligence, and it's called emotional intelligence.
Right.
So I think I remember in that moment thinking, I I'm not wired to sit across from a client, in therapy, for example, where we have to spend, where we do spend, by the way, lots of time, powerful and valuable time, understanding how people have arrived at where they are. I'm a big proponent of therapy. I love that. But when I learned about emotional intelligence, I thought, okay, here's something that everybody has some of, and everybody can develop. It can be learned, and certain skills matter more than others in certain places. Things like empathy, social responsibility, impulse control. So I just really got excited about the idea that, we don't necessarily have to be smarter. We have to leverage what we have, and we have to build some muscle in this way that we deal with the demands and pressures of life. So I was introduced to it in the early 2000s, and, it's been core to my work ever since.
So emotional intelligence, for a lot of people who I don't ever want to make an assumption that people know what
Yeah.
emotional intelligence for me, because I know when I read that book, it changed my life. And
Yeah.
Daniel Goldman, I was like, okay, that's me. I get it now, because the IQ was never high for me. This
Hmm.
EQ was high, which is this emotional intelligence. But could you
Yeah.
put it in a nutshell? What does emotional intelligence give us, the the small version of what that means to
Sure.
people? Why does that matter to people being happy and having effective leadership?
Sure. I think the definition I'm most comfortable with, or sort of appreciate the best, is, it's a set of skills and abilities that help us navigate the world. It's how we deal with the demands and pressures of life. It's how we harness the understanding we can obtain of ourselves, and then sort of extend that outward to better understand other people. I've heard it called street smarts. It's not your book smarts, it's your street smarts. Maybe it's sort of like your emotional common sense, but it isn't common sense, because I think if it was, we wouldn't, be offering courses and programs and assessments and development around it. But it is this way, in my mind, that it's how we deploy our IQ. We have knowledge and intelligence, but the way in which we use that is part of emotional intelligence. And the last thing I'll say, we're all wired a certain way. We have these natural behavioral drives. We're all very different, but left to our own devices, I think we could cause a lot of damage for each other. It's very difficult for us to work together because we're just different, and we're messy, fallible human creatures. That's okay, but we need to adapt. I don't like the word change. I love the word adapt. There are some places where we need to be a little more assertive, for example, or a little less assertive, a little more empathic. There are some places where we have to be more steady and patient, and that requires impulse control. Some of us don't have a lot of patience. We want to get results and we want to go. So emotional intelligence becomes this way in which we navigate and master our natural behavioral drives.
Right.
Is that
Yeah, well,
helpful?
I know what emotional intelligence did for me. Is it made me go, well, you got some things to learn about yourself, Diana. And
Yeah.
self-awareness was one of them, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I needed to become more self-aware. And that what that did was it got me to the root of understanding of, I come from abuse, I come from
Yeah.
a very traumatic beginning in life. And there were certain things that if triggered, I'm probably going to lose it. So that's what I learned about me. What was it about you that got you to understand with emotional intelligence a little bit about yourself? What would you say was something that you go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that before, that has enabled you to learn about life and success for you?
Sure. I would say that the understanding I developed about the depth of my emotional self-awareness
Mm-hmm.
was powerful, because I've always been a very emotional person. And of course, in the business world or wherever we happen to be, in families, emotions are not always welcome. And there's been a myth that says, keep emotions out of it. So I think just understanding that I am wired, and I do have a deep sense of emotional self-awareness, doesn't mean that's entirely healthy. It can be a liability, because everything is about how it feels versus, what is reality and what the facts say, and compared to how we feel. I would say that was eye-opening to me. And to recognize that self-regard, it is a skill of emotional intelligence. Our ability to size up what we do well and what we don't do so well and be okay with it. how comfortable we are in our own bag of skin. That is so critical to everything else we do in life. Diane, as you and I have talked, it's
Yeah.
about being the right size. So I think I discovered through emotional intelligence that I was too small on the inside, and therefore sometimes too big and too forceful or too unregulated on the outside. So a lot of the work I've done in personal development is trying to become the right size, not too big, not too small, but knowing what I have that works, knowing what I have that doesn't work, and not ruminating on that. Like, change what you can, but use what you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love what you said about, you said, you quoted Jack Canfield. You talked a lot about his success principles.
Yeah.
And I want to read what you wrote. You said, if you want to be successful, and success means so many different things to people, right?
Yeah.
You have to take 100% responsibility for everything you experience in your life, the quality of your relationships, your health, the results you produce, your feelings, your financial state, all of that. And I feel that's what you're referencing here, right?
Absolutely. That statement, I think it's the opening statement in his book called Success Principles, just hit me right between the eyes. First, it really ticked me off because I'm like, I'm not always responsible. I mean, there are things that are outside of my control, but the more I breathed that in and came to understand, yeah, you know what? It's all about our attitude. It's all about the energy we bring to things. It's all about how we regulate ourselves. It's powerful. Yeah, it's powerful.
It's powerful. And I feel a lot, oftentimes for me, as an advocate, it helps me understand the power that I can give to this world by really harnessing all of my gifts, harnessing everything I have to channel it the right way. As an advocate, what would you say to individuals who, because right now we're just going through such a challenging time in our country, how
Mhm.
would you say emotional intelligence can help one be an advocate, a better advocate, not only for themselves, but for other people? What would you say?
Well, I feel confident in answering this, especially and exclusively because I've just walked through a really wonderful curriculum that you designed for the Pivot and Rise Mastermind group, where I knew several months ago that I was being called to be more myself, but to be more, and I didn't really know how that would look or what shape that would take. But it is through and in your curriculum and in the exercises, the things that we did, evaluating and being able to develop capacity and emotional intelligence, regularly talking about and journaling about, what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, intentionally focusing on gratitude and things that are new and good. That's optimism. That is indeed a capacity of emotional intelligence, and it can be developed. I think to be an advocate, you really do. In my mind, it's about moving out of the way the stuff that keeps you from being the right size. I learned in the program that I've been small on the inside and mean and sometimes not receptive on the outside because I was scared. And too small on the inside, meaning I didn't necessarily trust my own thoughts and beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I can map that back to my natural behavioral pattern too. I'm very, very high in extroversion.
Mm-hmm.
In the world of predictive index, that's a high B. I have a strong need for social acceptance. I have a strong need for you to like me and for me to make sure you feel good and that we don't, that we're okay and I'm okay with you. And I had no idea until recently, a couple of years ago, how much that ran the show for me, how much that was behind. So that combined with maybe some trauma from the past prevented me from advocating for things that I truly believe in. I hid what I believed in.
Right.
And I'm learning really emotional intelligence and that ability to develop a sense of me. You talk about the identity gap, who I look like on the outside and who I really am on the inside, bringing that together. That's pure emotional intelligence. That work then allows you to have more freedom and comfortability, to say what you need to say to who you need to say it to and not say it mean. I mean, that's the definition of assertiveness, which is another competency in emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. Part of, I think, what is so, horrifying about what we're experiencing is there's a lot happening, but there's no love in the equation.
Mm-hmm.
There's there's a lot being said, and it could be truthful and powerful, but there's no love in the equation.
Mhm.
So we need to figure out a way, and I think this is why my goal would be, as I continue to develop my skills in advocacy, to be able to say things in a way that still honors and respects the other person, and has reverence for who they are and what they believe, but yet stands on a solid square of truth
Right.
for myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that make 100%. I feel that makes sense. And here's the thing: I think when we speak the truth in love, not
Yeah.
everybody's going to be accepting of that, and not everybody is going to see what you see. And I really feel there's a lot of work that has to get to that common ground. It can't just be one conversation, and
Right.
that's I enjoy the protests that are going on right now, because really we need to be able to speak this out, and people need to hear everything that's going on. And the advocacy that we all can bring is bring all of this to center, bring
Yes.
change in policy and practice and procedures, and making it so that everyone has an opportunity to get to justice,
Yeah.
and I really feel that that's really the core of our work. And what you speak about with emotional intelligence can help us all get there. So what would you say to your I have this question: what would you tell your 30 or 40-year-old self based upon what you've learned in the last 10 years? What would you tell her? Or 3 years?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, that's such a good question. I would say, first and foremost, just learn more about who you are, and learn to embrace who you are.
Mhm.
Learn to accept, all the parts of you, and use that information to make better decisions about, not better decisions. Okay. Yes. Make better decisions about, where you're going to spend your time, what you're going to worry about, what things will keep you up at night. And of course, the past years of experience for me personally have been incredible growth experiences. I know that anytime there's challenge, discomfort, things that are hard to handle, we grow. I mean, sometimes I have my friends that say, okay, God, enough growing. Like, I'm good right now.
Right.
And I felt that way too. So I think to a 30 or 40-year-old Sarah, I would say, hey, you know what? You have an energy and a passion for people, and don't hide your light under a bushel basket. Don't be afraid, to better explore and understand what drives you and what you believe in, and then find ways to articulate that, because it does matter. It makes a difference. It makes a difference in families, in relationships, in teams, in workplaces, in the community. It makes a difference.
Mhm. I believe what you're actually telling everyone to do is do your homework, do the
Yes.
work on yourself. And a lot of people, what we're not doing is the work on ourselves. We're not,
Yes.
yes. What you
I
got?
just want, well, I wanted to share, I'm a
Yes,
big fan
please.
of Father Richard Rohr. He's a very contemplative priest, and just writes powerful things. But today he wrote about how, our opportunity, if we're going to rebuild society, we first need to be rebuilt ourselves.
Mm.
Like, whew, jumped out at me.
Mhm.
The beautiful part of the Rise Advocate program is that, I really was guided to do a lot of that work. And the inside work is what will be reflected on the outside.
Mhm.
And it is, when you think about it, it's so simple. It's just that it's difficult. It's
Right.
not easy, but it's simple.
Yeah. It's very, very, very simple, but difficult to achieve because it takes quite a bit of time. You've now done so much work in our community, and you continue to shine a light in leadership. And I want to make certain before we close, we talk about the Leadership Toledo training that you're going to be giving to us next week.
Mhm.
But you've chosen to move into a new venture. And this new venture, and I want to say, is called Real Good Ventures. And it's a firm partnership focused on healthy and strong leadership. But you say that there's a tagline: don't be good, be real good. Could you
Real.
talk a little bit about why Real Good Ventures came about, and what you intend to help people with this being real good.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. It is a quippy title, Real Good Ventures. You think we're like a, kayak company or something. But don't just be good, be real good. It's quippy, but behind that, I believe an incredible amount of substance, because we're talking about people's lives and their well-being. I go back to that statement I made earlier. We spend upwards of 2/3 or more of our time working on something or working somewhere. And yet we spend so many of those hours unhappy, unfulfilled, unsuccessful. And, if we go back to Jack Canfield's principle, yes, we are 100% responsible for what we experience. And our organizations and our leadership are also responsible. They bear the burden of the responsibility in optimizing the environment and being able to, optimize each person. And that requires leaders to have some savvy. So at Real Good Ventures, our mission is to really help organizations and people excel and find fulfillment and success. I think that's always been my personal passion. It's always been best people solutions. It's always been about the people. Like, what do you need to help you engage, do your best work, and then excel, and really be happy about what you're doing. I know some people might not ever reach that, and that might not be something we can control. But for the most of us, good leadership is, in fact, responsible for the level of engagement that we have and the success that we have. I know too many examples of poor leadership, got a couple good examples of great leadership. Personally, I've experienced questionable engagement with leadership. But at the same time, we've got this opportunity, and I think Real Good Ventures is about using things like analytics, people data, to help diagnose where we struggle together. I think we need tools and information. Left to our own devices, we're probably not going to be that successful at shifting and adapting what we need to adapt. So we use emotional intelligence assessments. We use the predictive index. We have some other diagnostics that then teams and people can use and chief leaders can use to figure out, okay, what needs to change? What do I need to do differently? How do I adapt to get better results? And more importantly than that, to help people have vitality and well-being and success and fulfillment. And I could go on and on. I'm a little bit passionate
I
about
think that we have to be passionate about what it is, and it sounds real good that you are passionate. And I really believe, from my perspective, because I deal a lot with equity, I deal a lot with diversity, I deal a lot with making certain people are included. I feel Real Good Ventures can help people get in real good trouble. If I'm quoting,
yes.
To get into good trouble. Good trouble means that you are looking at what's going on in your organization and questioning that. Really making certain that you're seeing, is this right? Is this something that is going to make everyone feel included? Is this policy correct? Is this practice right? And I feel Real Good Ventures could be able to help people in propelling them to utilize their voice in the most effective manner. And I feel, just kind of hearkening back to what you said, and just to get a little personal, I mean, you've been doing your good voice, using your good voice to not only change what's in organizations, but even in your family, and looking at ways that you can propel this emotional intelligence and desire for advocacy and making people feel that they matter. You're even doing that within your own family. So I've shifted from Real Good Ventures and into your own personal life. But can you share with the listeners about your real good work in yourself, but not only just for yourself, but even taking it, to the extent you feel comfortable, to your family? Because I really feel this is something we've talked about, because I believe people do real good work. They do this good work, but then it doesn't translate into their home life. And that identity gap tends to be bigger because we're not looking at what we are behind the scenes. Can you share just a little bit about what some of the things you've felt that you've done, even in your own home life, that you might feel comfortable to share with listeners?
I think, Diana, it starts with that vulnerability. Being vulnerable and receptive to the idea that, experiences and situations along the way have made it difficult. For example, just to be able to be in a conversation with a family member about, politics or social justice issues, Black Lives Matter,
Yes.
racial injustice, and those kind of things. So I think what I was able to get in touch with through, especially through the work in the Rise Advocate program, it was a very individual journey that we took together. But in that individual work, being quiet and giving space to find out where did you stop talking, or why didn't you start talking? Like, as you grew up, where did you change or stop engaging? And where did you get scared to really say what you believe in? And of course, when you do that, when you shut down, I mean, I stopped listening too. So I am as guilty as, discounting opinions of my family members as sometimes I've always felt they were of mine, my opinions. But all that to say, what has been made possible through that inside work is to have some courage and some persistence and a grace, certainly some grace, and some equipping to sit across the table from somebody you love a lot but don't agree with at all.
Yeah.
Say, wow, tell me how you came to that conclusion, or tell me more about why you believe that. And to not have my heart pound out of my chest, or sweat drip down the back, to be able to breathe and listen and be with that, and then be able to say something back that isn't offensive or angry, but maybe poses a question or even a challenge, or just explains a little bit about how I see it differently. There's been an incredible amount of progress in that regard. Doesn't mean I want to change anyone's opinion. I mean, I would love it if some opinions changed in my family, but I want to be able, to be the right size inside, to be a model and an example of a different perspective, but to do so in a loving and respectful way. And there's a lot of trauma in all that's been going on. I don't in any way claim to understand, what a lot of people are experiencing, but I know in my experience, even as a white person, it's scary, it's unknown. There's shame, there's guilt, there's all these things that kind of swirl around and really make it difficult to just be in one another's presence. But I thank you in particular, Diana, for helping, to guide and help me develop some ability to be in those conversations, because it starts there. I mean, Facebook, social media, things we, shout out on email and other things, that's easy. That's easy to shoot people down. It's much more difficult, with classmates from high school and people you've known your whole life to say, I see it a little bit differently. Yeah. And for that to be okay. So yeah. I thank you for that.
And, Sarah, I just wanted to just put an emphasis on that, because that's the real good work. That is the good work that will change this nation. And that's the reason why I wanted to bring that up in this conversation, because I want everyone to hear that it won't be comfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable. You might offend people. Anger comes into play. However, if we can settle into that and we can move beyond that and we can dig down deep and do that real good work, we will see a big change. And I know that this is what you're all about. That's how you want people to be happy. You want people to be joyful. You want people to love their work. And not a lot of people are happy at work because they see and feel injustice that's happening. And that's the reason why we're seeing people that are saying, no more. I'm not doing that anymore. And so I'm really confident that your work, and along with all of the stuff you've learned over the years, is only going to enhance the clients' lives that you work with Real Good Ventures. And I know that there's just certain elements of Real Good Ventures that are really going to just help propel this conversation and this work of advocacy and justice forward.
Well, yeah, I love the way you worded that, Diana. I have to say that a couple of years ago, or even a year ago, I don't know that I would have been able to sit where I am and have, the comfortability and the confidence and the faith in the work that we do with people that I do now. And all that is to say, empathy, which is something you train and teach and advocate for all the time. It's the ability to tune into what the other person is experiencing and feeling without judgment. It's not necessarily touchy-feely. There is that part of empathy, but it's about a read of the other person. And to me, I think that's the key. That in any work that we're doing together, in our families, in a company, there has to be that level of empathy and understanding, to be informed by the other person's perspective, to know it, to give reverence to it. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but it allows us then access to many tools, many avenues with which, we can work together. So it's powerful, it's challenging, but I find that the leaders who are courageous and brave enough to be vulnerable and to recognize, what, you might have a better idea than me. That's my hope for myself is, in any dynamic or circumstance, I have a propensity to think that my way is the right way. It's this beautiful wiring that God gave me, but I want to be the right size. I want to be receptive, to the fact that there might be another way to see it, might be another way to do it. And I think that's one of those keys to leadership. I hope we can all grasp that.
Truly, truly. So, what encouraging word or advice do you have just to kind of close this out here and then talk about just a couple more things for people who are struggling right now? What encouraging word would you say? What first step should they take? What do you think would be, what advice do you have for people for that?
Oh gosh, that's a good one, Diana. For people who are struggling with depression and anxiety, I just flat out say, what, reach out, get some help, because you don't have to go through incredible, intense struggles, mental health struggles by yourself. I mean, there's that level of struggle where people are just so overwhelmed. I think to those of us who have a tendency to maybe get too small inside, spend time inside, spend time in quiet. I know that's something I've avoided for centuries, but do the wonderful things to help you embrace your skills, your abilities, your gifting, and spend less time thinking about what you don't have or what you don't possess as a skill or an ability. I mean, I think this is a balance that we're always going to have things to work on, but if that we could spend some time with and become well acquainted with and appreciative of the things that are naturally what we do well, and somebody can help you figure out what that is if you're not sure. Like, you just need to ask the people that care about you. They will tell you what you do well. So if you're struggling, recognize that. I think the other thing too is this time is this time. It's a chapter. It will not go on forever. We will see our way into a new time. But in the meantime, what brings you joy? What about you can you accentuate to experience more joy? And thoughts become things. That's something you say often, Diana. I fully believe it. I have shut off the news. I'm not doing it anymore. I do it sometimes, but I'm not doing it anymore. I need to be focused on the things that bring energy and possibility and remind me that we're okay. We're going to be okay. So I would say anything you can do to sort of recalibrate what tend to be very negative emotions. The tone of things in the world right now is very, very negative. But inside and in the world we live in, we can create something very different, and it's real. Real.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I, know that folks are out there today. Actually, I'll pinpoint this, that this is the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington and the I Have a Dream and the sad killing of Emmett Till. And there's just so much going on in our country. And I believe that within ourselves is a beautiful opportunity for change in the work that we are doing to bring about love, truth, justice, and peace. And if we can keep that momentum going and do what says in your sign back there says live a great story, that we get to go out and live that great story, and we get to go out there and be those people doing that real good work and doing things that are going to get us into what's called good trouble. So I appreciate you in your work. I thank you for everything that you're doing to put yourself out there, to step into uncomfortable situations and be that light that you've shown to me all this time. But even now I see it illuminate, and it's beautiful. Where can people reach you for the work that you do?
We can be found certainly on the web, realgoodventures.com. Email Sara@realgoodventures.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Diana, you just said something, if I may just contribute one more thought, live a great story. For a long time, I looked at people like you and I thought, wow, there's such incredible influence and such amazing energy and so many gifts and talents. And I would compare and say, oh, I can't do that. I'm not any of that. I'm not out feeding, the hungry. I'm not on the front lines of helping those who are marginalized. I'm not in the healthcare field. I'm not on the front lines of dealing with a pandemic. And so if you're like me, wherever you are, it's important. That's where you live your great story with your spouse, with that relationship you have with your spouse or your children or your neighbor. It is right where we are. There's nowhere to get. I think that's another big aha. Living a great story means, we just in this moment do what we can to be that love and kindness. I just want to say, we're not all going to become an elected official and write 10 books and be motivational speakers. And we're not all going to be able to do that. But we can bring peace and joy right where we are. And from there, as you're teaching me, from there, we go out.
I love that you said that. That's such a perfect opportunity for all of us because you're right where we're at. Look outside, go to your neighbor's house, do that.
Yes.
Or
cookies.
sit with your husband at night, which is what I'm doing. Just be with him. Just be.
Yes.
With him. So I appreciate that. Next week, we get to hear from you from Leadership Toledo, for those of you timely. And you are going to be speaking about leadership, right? And I'm looking forward to hearing from that. People can go to leadershiptoledo.org. Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's free. There are actually 2 parts in the series. The first one is September 2nd. The second one is the 9th. The one on the 9th focuses more on how we adapt. That's the emotional intelligence component. But the first part is just, how can we use the information we have about ourselves, to navigate differently, So it's more of a self-awareness, like, hey, as good leaders, these are some of the things we're going to do really well. This is where we may struggle. It'll be a personal experience. Everybody who's participating has a chance to take the predictive index. But in any case, even if they don't, and you don't have to attend both. But I'm really grateful to Leadership Toledo for providing a whole series of amazing speakers to address our community.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sara. The world is better because of you in it, and our community is much more enriched. And I really appreciate you just being that bold, courageous leader, being that woman of vision and of hope, and serving our community and making certain that you are just taking all your passion and making people better. So I appreciate you taking the time today.
Oh, thank you, Diana. Love you to pieces and keep up the amazing work you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.